I think there is danger in living in nostalgia and refusing to live in the present, just like there's danger in living in the future and refusing to live in the present.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Portable Trevor here, and today I have a very special guest. He's a really good friend of mine from my hometown, and he's an amazing writer. And one of the best compliments I can give him is he just has amazing taste in content. Please welcome Britton Miethe. What's up, man?
What's up, dude? How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Good. How's that intro?
Hey, I liked it. That was more flattering than I've gotten in months. I'm on board. If you could just introduce me before every meeting I have with a client, I'd be totally in on it.
Totally. I'll drive 2 hours to Cleveland every meeting that you have. When do you have meetings?
Look, man, don't even, like, it's not even that big of a deal. You can just record a voice memo for me to have someone herald. No worries there.
So I had the voice of Porky Pig on a couple weeks ago, and he sent me like a voiceover, like, hey, I'm going to be on the Portable Trevor and it was like the cleanest, the most crisp audio I've ever heard in my life. Like, it sounded just way too professional. And for someone to say like my name with that God level of audio, I was just like, can I just like record you with every possible situation that I could ever be in, and you just like introduce me?
I will do my best to bring the professionalism down in the medium. That's my goal.
That's exactly what you should do. But dude, welcome. I'm really happy to have you on. Like I was saying before, I love these are some of my favorite episodes, just having friends on and we can talk about whatever. The stress level is low, and you're always a good time to hang with. So what I've always asked my guests is like, what have you been up to during all this quarantine? Has your life been much different?
Man, I've been eating like a substantially larger amount of Lunchables than I've eaten in a long time. So that's step one. Folks, don't get the ham Lunchables. That's a bad idea. Pizza Lunchables are the way to go. No, other than that, I quarantined obviously hard for about 2 months, so didn't get out much. Been watching The West Wing, which has been awesome. Also listening to an episode-by-episode breakdown of The West Wing after each episode I watch, which is maybe a little dirty, but it's been fun. But other than that, man, not much. Started going back into the office for work about 3 weeks ago, so kind of been adjusting to the new normal. But yeah, a lot of binge watching, a lot of writing, a lot of trying to help clients get through, the shutdown and all of that with marketing stuff. So.
And how's that been going, communicating and working with clients like during all of this? Because that must be pretty tough to do that, to talk to them to like, we're going to change your marketing or advertising a little bit. I'll just let you talk. Like, how has that been?
Yeah, I think the most interesting part of it is something I wouldn't have expected, which is we're a team of somewhere between 10 and 12, depending on the project and whatnot. And what has been pretty easy is connecting over Zoom with everyone. Everyone's been incredibly kind and willing to, adjust based on the situation. But what's been a little strange is the amount of times I forget that I can't mention like, oh, hey, by the way, Donovan, this thing happened, so we should adjust on this because we're just in the office together. So when you're not, when you're in 12 offices and homes across the city, it's a lot more difficult. You have to really put thought into like, oh, I've got to email the person and give notes on the meeting and all of that. So that's kind of been the biggest adjustment in terms of, pivoting client marketing. They've all been wonderful. It's been a lot of, sanitation updates and that kind of thing, but it's been good. And luckily things are starting to return to normal in terms of business and whatnot. So that's been great. Hopefully, everyone stays very cautious and very safe with everything, but it's been good to see that businesses have been able to stay alive during it.
Yeah, that's great, because I really tried to check in with all my friends that run their own businesses or potentially like have a business where it could shut down, because it's a really scary time to be a business owner. Like probably the biggest shutdown in history with businesses that are just going out, and that's terrifying. I hope that hasn't happened with any of your clients.
No, man. Luckily, they've all been just fine, which has been wonderful. There's definitely been, some cases like you were talking about in town that I've seen with old family diners that are closing down, and you hate obviously hate to see that, not just for the business, obviously significantly for the business, but also for the legacy of the city. When you start losing those establishments that have been around for 50, 60, 70 years, you start losing part of what makes your city your city. I'm hoping the ones that are left are able to, have been able to adjust and are able to kind of continue on with that. Local business is just so important, obviously.
And since me and Britton are from Cleveland, I thought I'd give a quick shout out because this just made me think of this. And you guys kind of work near them, like your office, Terror Running Company. They were on Good Morning America, which is amazing.
Yeah, man, that's ridiculously cool. We were so happy for them. I mean, anytime you get to be on GMA is a good day, right?
Oh yeah, totally. So for those of you that are like, what are you talking about? So me and Britton are from Cleveland, Tennessee, and that's where I grew up my whole life. And there is a really rad shoe running company in town, and I actually have a pair of shoes, these New Balances in here. Maybe I can show them off sometime. I need to do like a shoe collection on my show.
There you go.
It'll be like 2 minutes long, but it'll be great. But yeah, it makes me proud seeing Cleveland doing big things like that because we're so small and you don't hear things like that often.
Yeah, man. It's anytime a city that's, I mean, because Cleveland's only what, 40,000, somewhere in there, 50,000? Like it's not big, but anytime waves are made in a city that large, it's really cool to see the community rally behind the business. I've seen so many people post who don't run, who are like, oh my gosh, Tara's on GMA, which has been, that kind of support's great. I love it.
Oh yeah, totally. And what else has been going on in Cleveland? Because I haven't been there in forever.
Woo! Man, the movie theaters are closed. There's not much else. That's what we got. I'm
so sad.
There are like 40 liquor stores now that the liquor law got approved. So that's new. For people watching, that is a big deal. In Cleveland, that was a fight. Like we were talking Hatfields and McCoys level fight for like.
It really was.
So who knows if that's for the better or worse, but it's happening.
It's got to help the economy of Cleveland, surely.
Surely, hopefully. But yeah, other than we have a second Chick-fil-A now. It has a double drive-through. People are excited.
People, if you want to see the longest Chick-fil-A line ever, go to Cleveland pre like 2019. It was like a war zone every single day. And if you wanted Chick-fil-A, you needed to like plan it.
It was weird. You would see them actually bringing the chickens in the back to just take care of them right then. That's how many chickens they were running. Hold on, our farm is busy. Bring in more chickens. Somehow both of the lines are still that long. I don't quite know how, but if you go around lunch, you'll be like literally waiting on the street at either location. It doesn't matter.
I used to make the joke every time I passed by. I'd be like, it's like they take shifts. Like, who do people just camp out at Chick-fil-A that we're not seeing and just are like, all right, we got to go now. Bravo team, go.
I went at 3 p.m. the other day after a meeting and literally waited 15 minutes. And I was like, I'm happy for them. Like, keep as many people employed as you can. It's great. The chicken's delicious. But 3 p.m.
That's rough. We have a Chick-fil-A. I live in Marietta, Georgia, and there's a Chick-fil-A like 2 minutes from me. And it's not quite as packed, but I'm getting some flashbacks from Cleveland. Like, this line is still pretty long.
For real, dude. For real.
Yeah. But Britton, like, you do so many things. Like, Rob told me that you're one of the best writers he's ever worked for, like for copy and everything. So what do you think, like, and I know it's not going to be fun to say something like this, but what do you think like makes your style of writing like work for the content?
Oh, man. Yeah, that's the kind of, I hate answering that kind of question because it feels so. I think what I try to do and what our entire team does a wonderful job of doing, and Rob's taught me to do really well, is I know the cliche right now is try to tell a client's story. So whoever you're writing for, tell their story, which is true. You always do want to be a storyteller no matter what you do. But I think the most important thing that people lose pretty often is you have to make sure to speak in a way that your customers can understand the story. So no matter how great of a story you tell, if it's told in a way that the people who are buying your products don't care about, you failed. So I think that's something as a writer that I really try to work hard at is, we work with people from big religious organizations to universities to local guitar shops. And obviously a Southern Cleveland, Tennessee local guitar shop customer is going to speak a very different language than a church in Puerto Rico. Like those are very, I mean, yes, one is English and one is Spanish. Didn't even need to make that drum roll dad joke here. But, yeah, exactly. But, with the guitar shop, you're going to probably talk a lot more in memes. You're going to talk in song lyrics. You're going to tell your story through. Today, I'm feeling like that time I saw this artist for the first time. Whereas the church, you're definitely going to speak more in, we're so blessed to be able to present this to you. It's really encouraging to be able to support the body in this way. There are phrases that at their worst can be cliches, but at their best can be idioms for a specific subculture. And I think if you tap into those subcultures, that's where your success is. Sorry, that was a very rambling answer, but
no, I don't think so at all. Like, story is very important, but I do agree it is a little cliche to be like, we want to like I feel like I could type in marketing agency Marietta or Atlanta, Georgia. I feel like the very first one, it would say something along the lines of, we're here to tell your story because we care about you. And
right.
like, that's why I like the Alderman group. You guys don't say that at all. You guys say all hail solutions. Like, I love that phrase because it is like, I've never heard of that ever. Cause like so many advertising agencies want to like try so hard to connect with you, but it seems like you guys are like, no, we want to solve your problem, which is telling your story or telling your brand or whatever.
Yeah, man. I love that that's actually our slogan now. That started as an inside joke with Rob and I for like 2 years before it was ever a slogan. And we would just text because we would be texting each other at like, 1 a.m. about client rundowns and whatnot. And one of us would be like, oh man, I don't mean to bother you. And the other one's like, man, solutions rule. It's okay. All hail solutions. That was kind of so like we started just texting each other whenever there was like a ridiculous. So if a client was like, can you have us a script for a 3-minute video by tomorrow? And it's just like an absurd request. But American dollar bills sometimes make absurd requests. So that's okay. And that was always our thing. Like, hey, can you have the script by tomorrow? # all hail. And so one day he was talking to a client of ours, and he's like, yeah, we've changed our slogan. We're now all hail solutions. And I kind of looked over like, okay, like, no worries, that's cool. So I love the kind of natural, I think that's where corporate culture is awesome, is like, especially small businesses, is it starts, if you have a healthy culture, what you actually end up facing outwards is just a reflection of what the people inside of your team think is funny or memorable or, sincere. And so I love when happy accidents like that happen, where it's like, man, this was just us messing around, but now like it's about to be in a neon sign on the back of our new office. Like, that's awesome. I love it.
Dude, sick.
Yeah.
Neon sign. You guys are way more legit now.
I think the neon sign raised our legitness by about 23%.
I could see that.
Yeah.
And I've always wondered the backstory behind that because, I figured it came from, because, I mean, like, me, you, and Rob, like, we're all nerds, and I totally get that. And, like, Rob's all about playing, like, D&D and Magic the Gathering. So saying something like all hail, I'm like, of course, like Rob would think of that. That's awesome.
It has a certain, like, 1983 movie vibe to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a bunch of people, like you said, Stranger Things, sitting around a D&D table. Like, it's the kind of thing that Dustin would just yell for no apparent reason.
Absolutely. And that just, like, speaks to the character of the company, too.
Yeah, man, we've had a lot of fun with it. Hopefully it lasts for a while. It's on like every shirt that any of us own at this point, so it better last for a while or else.
I want to get a shirt, so please, next time I'm in Cleveland, I need to hit you guys up.
Dude, seriously, text me your address. We'll get you one. We'll mail one out.
Oh, dude, thanks. I'll definitely do that after the show. So I want to go back to the essence of story. I know you said it's cliche, but I've had a couple people ask me like, so for everyone that doesn't know, I had Tony Hawk share one of my videos recently, and it was such a dumb and cheesy video, but it actually worked, like, because it got Tony's attention, and people were asking me like, how did you get that to work? And my philosophy behind like my sketches or really anything that I make that's like comedy, no matter how dumb it is, there needs to be a story or people are not going to care. Like for the Tony Hawk video, I have it in 3 acts. So the first act, he gets excited. He's like, "Whoa, new Tony Hawk game!" And then he like goes through the game motions, and he's like just gets excited. He starts skating, and then the third act is him going to the sun and blasting off and doing the 900 and coming back down. So it's kind of like a solution and like a story progression. So, in my opinion, anything that you make, there needs to be some type of story that the audience can follow along, no matter how stupid it is.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think what you did really well in that video, which I love that video. It's great. I've watched it multiple
Thank you.
times. So after Mr. Hawk shared it, of course, I had to go rewatch it. Anyway, what I think was so great about that video is, yes, it was, even though it was only, about 2.5 minutes, somewhere in there?
No, it's only a minute.
Only a minute. Okay. So even though it was only a minute, it feels like it has enough story in it for 2.5 minutes without feeling rushed. It feels like a completed thought. Also, what I love about it is there are in-jokes in there about, like, obviously there are a lot of people doing the, like, choose your fighter thing right now. That's become kind of a meme in itself. But there are specific, like, it was clear that you knew the subculture. It was clear that some of those outfits were actually the ridiculous outfits that were on the GameCube version of it way back when. And so I think that's why it resonated so hard, is not only, so you repeated some beats of the subculture, which got people to identify with it. And then I loved, like, when he flies around the globe. That's one of those things that's, like, not in the games, but is the total, like, that is the kind of joke people make who love Pro Skater. Like, I saw that and I was like, what the heck is even happening here? But in a good way. So I think that was really cool. I love seeing, like you said, a complete story in 60 seconds. I think when people get that short with a video, I love you were talking about the 3 acts of it. Because I feel like when it gets that short, people stop thinking about a structured story and they start thinking, like, how many punchlines can I get in 60 seconds? But a punchline only works if there's something to set it up. So I love that it had both of those elements to it.
Yeah, and like when I was creating it, I was so afraid that I was like, I want this to be quick, like get in, get out. Like that's usually like my style with editing and everything. And I want to do like a tutorial on this. Like, for instance, like if you took out the first part, he's bored, he's like looking through Facebook or whatever, but the video actually started with the choose your character thing. I feel like people would be like, whoa, how did we get here? I want to know where this guy came from. Mm-hmm. So just giving that tiny little bit of backstory. He's bored, he finds out there's a new Tony Hawk Pro Skater game, and then it's even funnier whenever you look at it in retrospect. It's like, we went from a guy's bedroom who's bored, and now he blasted off into space, and now he's on fire.
Right. So what's something you've learned? Because I know you've been making a ton of videos recently, which I love. There's, something impressive in itself just in putting out that much content. Do you know Jason Isbell? You've heard of him, I'm assuming?
I think so.
So he's like an Americana singer-songwriter who's big right now.
Yes,
he's probably a top 10 songwriter who's active. Obviously not of all time. You don't compare John Lennon to anyone, but who's going right now. And he just put out an album about 2 weeks ago. And so people have been asking him over and over, like, you've put out, I think it's 4 albums now in a row that have all won Grammys, have all been consistently, in top 20 lists and whatnot at the end of the year. How do you keep finding stories to tell? Because his songs are very stripped down. It's just him, a guitar, sometimes some drums, and they're very much short stories put to song, as cliche as that is. And what he was saying in almost every podcast interview he did, because he kind of went, with us all in quarantine, he kind of went on a podcast tour rather than going on an actual tour to promote. And what he said is you have to find joy in the act of actually making the thing. So when I used to sit back and wait for the songs to be good, I had a lot of days where I was wondering what I was doing. Was I actually improving? What was happening? But if each day I just say, I'm going to write a song today, I don't care if it's if it is a good or bad song, I'm going to write a song. That means I can find fulfillment in the fact that I actually met my goal of writing a song, because quality is such an abstract goal to chase. So that's something I've dug about what you're doing recently, is you're just putting stuff out. And you can tell as you keep going with it, there are little things you figure out and little things you tweak. And so I guess that's what I wanted to ask. Is there anything, especially as you're doing, whether it's a minute or 5 minutes, kind of short story, films, short videos, whatever you want to say, what are some little tricks you've learned recently that maybe you didn't know a couple months ago about, like, oh, if I make the first act a little shorter, the audience gets hooked more, or, something like that. Is there anything that you've kind of found yourself adjusting?
Yeah. So with me, there's really no formula. And if there is one, it's in my head and like no one else can find it. So
Sure.
I feel like I'm trying to sound like some like beatnik artist or whatever. Like, yeah, man, like no one's ever going to find out what I can do. But,
Formula is human nature.
but
Right.
like, it really is just in my head. Like, when I think of an idea, I either write it down or I pick up my camera. Like literally with that Tony Hawk video, I thought of it a month ago, and then like the game was announced, and then Tony Hawk was on Joe Rogan, and then Tony Hawk did the nice thing for the kid. He sent him a skateboard.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that weekend, I was like, guys, I really want to make it, and timing was everything with that. I think like all the stars were aligning and it was just a perfect moment. But that's not why I made it. I made it because I genuinely love those games and it was just fun.
The
But
soundtracks on those games is next level. I feel like they get forgotten, but those soundtracks, phew.
and I also want to give a really quick shout out. One of my best friends, Kyle Brooks, did the the intentionally terrible cover of Goldfinger at the end of the video. So that's them. But I'm gonna quit talking about myself for a second because something else that I attribute it to is, and I've talked about this so many times in the show, and I'll sing its praises forever. But there's this amazing place here in Atlanta. There's this community called the Thunderdome, and before all the quarantine, I was going there like every Monday night or whatever day they wanted to meet, and every week we would show films. And so every night we would roll these dice and they would stand for these codes and it would say something like 3 shots, all slow motion. And we had to make 1 minute films. So that's where a lot of those that I posted last year came from was the Thunderdome.
Hmm.
So the philosophy behind it is, and our leader Isaac never said this. I actually read it in like an article or something like that, and I've resonated with it ever since. So, Britton, let's say that you're a teacher, like you're teaching like content creation or something like that, and you only have 2 students. You tell one, I want you to make a film every week until December. And you tell the other student, I want you to make one film like the entire year, and then you're going to premiere it in December. Like, who do you think is going to be a better filmmaker at the end of that year?
Oh, definitely the one who's making consistent films.
Exactly. So that's kind of the philosophy behind it. And
Yeah.
that's what I loved. And I'm not like bashing people that do this, but I used to think that filmmaking had to be these extravagant sets, like 10 people on a crew, like getting lights ready, like putting on makeup, marking everything, like getting the director coffee, and it can totally be that. And I'm not knocking
Mhm.
that. Like I know Rob has done shoots with that with like Chad Guyton, and those are amazing films, and just really good content. But with the Thunderdome, we've had people that have come in that were plumbers and construction workers that have never picked up a camera in their life. They're like, hey, we're interested in film. And I think that's so rad because
Hmm.
filmmaking used to be a rich man's game. And now, like, we have these. You can make, if you have a phone of any type, you can make a film. Like, the
Yep.
best camera that you have is the one that you own. So that's why I attribute a lot of my success and my my improvements is because I've made so many. And that's the advice I want to give to anyone. The more you make, I think the better you're going to get. You're going to suck at first. I'll just tell you that flat out. Whatever
Yep.
you're going to try, you're going to be terrible at. And if you can accept that, then you're going to be unstoppable by the time like in a year if you keep at it.
Yeah. And man, if I could give a quick shout out, you mentioned Kyle. Obviously, you and him are real close. I'm real excited that I get to work with him as much as I do. He's an integral part of the Alderman group too. And man, that dude is freaking on his game recently.
For
Like,
real, like
oh my
Kyle.
gosh, he did fireworks videos the other that were like, whew, chef's kiss. They were very good. So anyway, I just want to shout him out, man. He's been every success that Tag has, he's been right at the core of. So he's been wonderful to work with, a great friend, all around good dude. Everyone go check out his stuff. I think he's on Instagram.
Oh yeah, Kyle's also in
I
a
don't
band called My Captain, My King. Oh what?
My Captain, My King. There you go.
Yep.
His band.
It's amazing. I could talk for the rest
okay.
of the podcast about how awesome Kyle is.
Man, that's what we're going to do. We'll do an episode. I'm taking over your show now, apparently. We'll do an episode that's just like different people giving 5-minute tributes to Kyle, but make him watch it all and just see how uncomfortable he gets during the whole thing.
Watching his face, if we were to do that, would be the greatest joy of my life. He would be laughing and smiling awkwardly and just making really strange references to Spider-Man 3 or just something weird.
Yeah, dude, absolutely.
Everyone, I really hope the 5 people that are watching this right now are like, what the heck are you talking about? But I want to have Kyle on the show.
Spider-Man 3 is a film treasure. Everyone's got to go watch it. Once you see those jazz hands from Tobey Maguire, you never lived the same again.
That's my favorite part is when he slides. And then he's like, now get some of this.
It's so bad. I love it.
Really bad.
I don't know why they felt the need to put like 23 villains in one movie. I don't know why. Like, you're not Lord of the Rings. Stop. Just stop. But it was fun to watch.
So speaking of movies, Britton is one of the biggest Disney fans that I've ever met. And I really want to find out the core of his fascination with it because I love Disney too, but Britton like goes to Disney World and I've only been like twice, I think. And
these pictures behind me are all like random Disney World references. So yeah, no, so my wife and I are Disney World annual pass holders. So we're down there all the time. I think the origin of it is, so my dad's a graphic designer. He's our graphic designer at the Alderman Group. I get to work with him all the time through that, which is wonderful. But he's always loved Disney, I think, for the storytelling and for the animation and whatnot. That kind of was an inspiration to him growing up. And my mom grew up with a little bit of a more difficult background. And so Disney World and kind of that very pure family nostalgic vibe they give off. That's kind of their whole brand is like, you come here and you can be a kid no matter what age you're at. That was something that was she always said when she was growing up, like, when I have my own family, we're going to do things like that. Like, that's going to be who we are. So because of those two kind of together, we started going, that was kind of our family. Instead of Christmas gifts, I'm from a big family. So I'm the oldest of 9 kids for those who are watching.
9 kids. Oh my gosh. He's a freak.
I know. It's crazy. The youngest one's 4. So it's a big expanse. I don't know what this motion, it's a big expanse. Apparently
I think you're looking for this. That's expanding.
That would be better. Yeah. Literally any motion would have been better, but less. We're here. So anyway, what we would do
audio
for
listeners are confused.
I did that thing where like I awkwardly say something then go like, this isn't going to play well on the podcast. That's me.
No, I love those. I think those are hilarious.
Oh man. Wow.
But this isn't in podcast format. We're going to do that soon for everyone listening. I'm going to eventually download all these and put them onto Spotify or whatever the kids do these days. Anyway, continue, please.
So anyway, story that I'm making way too long short. We went there for Christmas every year. That was our family Christmas gift. And then my dad, when I was in high school, had a stroke that we thought was going to end up being fatal. And we had just gone to Disney about a week before that stroke. And so we kind of thought that would be the last memories we had as a family was at Disney World. And so, praise God, he's fine. He recovered from that. But it kind of took on a different meaning. That was kind of the distillation of family at that point was that because of that trip and the timing. And so ever since then, it's just been, as dumb as it sounds and millennial as it sounds, it's been something that's kind of comforting, kind of a safe, like just some pure nostalgia washing over. And from time to time, I think we all need that. Plus, it's a big influence on pop culture all around. So I dig it for many reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to send you a video after this. It's a tribute to Disney animation.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever seen it, but this guy just takes every Disney movie that's been animated by Disney Animated Studios and just goes through all of these motions. he goes through like sad and happy, like gleeful, like, and then he like does like a section for the villains and the heroes and love and everything. And it's just done so. It's one of my favorite videos of all time. But I'll send it to you.
Yeah, no,
And
I want to
I'll
see it.
yeah, and I'll link it somewhere. Um, but I think that video captured why I love Disney, and it's because it's as as big of a corporation as it is, and as easy it is to hate Disney, like, oh no, they ruined Star Wars or they ruined this. Like, you can't deny like the good that they've done, like for art and for people in general. Like, I whenever I see a death scene in a movie, it almost never affects me as much as like, Simba losing Mufasa. Like,
Yeah,
and that was done in
yeah,
animation. Like, there's just things that you can't do with film that you can do in animation. And I think that's just
right.
beautiful. It makes you feel like a kid. It fills you with so much wonder. And it's the reason like why I make so many of my films today. Like, I mean, you've seen, I love nostalgia and the 80s aesthetic. And I
Mhm.
do that because it makes me happy and it makes me feel like a kid. And I want to share that with the world and be like, hey, the world doesn't have to suck. Like, you can be happy and make a Tony Hawk video.
Well, and I think there's something to like culture nowadays is we're such in that kind of rise and grind hustle culture, right? That's kind of who our generation has become. And I think there's a lot of merit to that. I know you work insanely hard. I work insanely hard. I know a lot of people who do. Kyle, let's come back to Kyle. Kyle works very hard. Um,
Go
but
Kyle.
I think go Kyle. He's gonna hate this so much. Anyway, I think there's something to remembering that childhood is just as valid of an experience as adulthood. And even though we function now as adults and we have responsibilities and bills and things to contribute to legacy in the world and our neighbor and those around us, there's also something important about returning to what made us to start with in order to recenter a little bit. And I think that's something like you said, Disney has a lot of problems. Yes, they're a mega corporation. Yes, some things with the merger with Fox were handled in ways that were pretty rough. Yes, they could stand to pay a higher minimum wage. There's a lot of things about Disney that I'm not going to be the blind, Disney mom fan here who's like, everything they do is perfect. It's not. But most of what they do gives us a chance to return to the core of who we are. And I think that's something, whether it's Disney, whether it's another nostalgic, whether it's going to the park with your family, whether it's, taking a dog for a walk, reading a book, reading Harry Potter or something you used to love. No matter what it is, I think it's important to return to that base so that you can make sure the rest of your building that you're building, on top of is solid, and that you can always kind of check who you are with who you're becoming and make sure you're on a trajectory you want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And my next question for you is I was going to ask this actually in regards of nostalgia, because it feels like people just hate nostalgia sometimes. And it's just
Yeah.
like for example, Stranger Things. Like, people say like, oh, this is such an eye roller whenever Eleven's playing with the Millennium Falcon. Like, we get it, it's the 80s. But
Right.
do you think nostalgia is a dangerous thing now in like our culture, or do you think it's okay to, submerge in it and just embrace it?
I think there's two answers to your question. Is it dangerous in itself? No, not as long as we're still pushing ourselves to be the best current version of ourselves we can.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is danger in living in nostalgia and refusing to live in the present, just like there's danger in living in the future and refusing to live in the present. I think anything we are doing now has to be a healthy combination of who we are, who we were, and who we want to become. So as long as nostalgia is helping, be part of a balanced diet of all of that, I think it's wonderful. In terms of art, I think nostalgia for nostalgia's sake is where we've gotten a lot of, it made me laugh, but the terrible Philly with, not Baywatch, maybe? Zac Efron and The Rock? I think that was Baywatch.
Oh, Baywatch, yeah.
Anyway, that was pure nostalgia. It wasn't a good movie. But something like Stranger Things, I think, yes, are there moments where you're like, oh my gosh, it's KFC, we understand. Like, this was popular. Sure, of course there are. But I think the reason Stranger Things works is rather than just throwing references of nostalgia at you, it actually digs into Spielberg, it digs into Lucas, it digs into, you know, just kind of some of the great artists of the last 30 years and says, what about this is important? So it's less like, oh, let me say a thing that is identically ripped off from this past thing, which they do sometimes. And it's more like, oh my gosh, that moment where the kids walk in and see E.T. for the first time. The reason that's special is because childlike wonder is special. What about that is important? And then, so I think that's the part of Stranger Things that people connect to, is learning from nostalgia, not just blasting you with it. So I guess short answer is no, I don't think it's dangerous. Yes, I think it can be overused.
Yeah, absolutely. And with my films, what I try to do, I never, like almost none of my films, there's never a moment where I'm like, whoa, like we're in the 80s. Check out the Millennium Falcon. Check out my cool 80s Nike shoes. I look like Marty McFly. I never do that. I try to, rather than that, I try to say, hey, remember that feeling you have when you watch an 80s movie or you look at something from your childhood? That's what I want to capture, is like that feeling, that warm, like more innocent time. That's really what my goal is with like my retro films. I try to give a little bit more substance to them rather than just slapping on a VHS filter or something.
Well, and what I love about what you just said too is I think it reiterates that art as escapism is still a valid form of art. So I think we often become a little bit snobby with like, this art didn't challenge me. And I love, like, you know, I'm an A24 fanatic. Like, I love all of the indie. I go to the Chat Film Fest every year. I dig indie film. I like it a lot. It challenges me. It, you know, hopefully puts me on a path with reflection that helps me improve something in life. I'm not going to say they're life-changing, but, you know, it's little like whiplash. There's a dedication to excellence, but also a danger of that dedication that you can really learn from. But I think that going to see, you know, as much as I don't like it, Fast 7 is just as valid. Like, life is hard. It's okay to take 2 hours and say, dang, that's a cool car. Like, that is perfectly okay. Now, do I think that Spotlight is more important than Fast 7? Who knows? I think it's more important to art itself, but I don't think it's more important to the dad taking his kids to the movie for the first time. So I think it's, you know, we've got to be able to let everything belong.
Yeah, absolutely. And Spotlight is undoubtedly an important film. And like, I feel like a dad taking his kids to see Star Wars for the first time is almost just as important. Like, to have those memories and to cherish them. Spotlight is different for many different reasons we could go
Yeah,
into.
that was a weird one to pick because obviously it also brings up some important societal issues that we needed to deal with. But
yeah, I don't want to dig into that. But I guess I'm just saying, culturally,
I just picked a Best Picture winner. Sorry about that.
no, I love that film. That was a great pick.
Wonderful.
And like but those aren't the films that I'm wanting to make. Like, like I'll be honest, I had a really good upbringing and a great childhood, and I kind of want to emulate that in my films and be like, hey, my childhood was awesome. I want to show how everyone in the world how fun being a kid can be and feeling like a kid. And like, I have A24 socks and I have an A24 t-shirt that I ordered. So I love my artsy fartsy BS movies. Those are always great. And I'll go to any A24 film because they're consistently amazing. I saw The Farewell like 2 weeks early before it came out at a screener. Like, it was amazing.
Dude, Uncut Gems, good gosh, that movie.
I never want to watch it again. That was the most stressful, annoying movie I've ever seen, and I loved it.
See, I love hip hop, I love the Celtics, and I love indie films. So, like, if you could make a movie in a lab for me, that would probably be it. But yeah, no, it's crazy stressful the entire time.
I want to ask you this, since you're a huge Celtics fan. Was that weird that they picked such a random like piece of history and like built this, you know, fake story around it?
Man, I loved it. The thing that was weird to me, honestly, was how good of an actor Kevin Garnett was.
He was.
expect, like, yes, he played himself, but he played himself 12 years ago. Like, it still looks like Kevin Garnett. And the whole, like, it was an interesting, so yeah, it was strange to watch, but it was kind of, I think if they had picked, like, Jordan's three-peat, like, people would have been like, okay. But they picked one that was, like, an important victory, but not one that people really talk about. And so I think they kind of hit that balance of, like, they place you just at the right moment, but they don't hit you over the head with it. It's just kind of like a subtle reminder of where we are.
Yeah, totally. And I think that was cool of them to pick something that, it didn't change the game of basketball. It didn't,
Yeah.
they didn't make a Space Jam out of that movie. They made it cut gems.
Yep. Yep.
But yeah, to go back to, the topic of nostalgia, like I think this is an amazing topic because it's something that I've dealt with. I'm like, is it bad for me to be like, hey, wasn't this time awesome? And because people are tired of it, like I've already said. And I think people should dive into it more rather than avoid it or try to make artsy fartsy movies.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
But
absolutely. And I think it's something that, and like you just said, yes, there are valid critiques of saying this thing in the past was so amazing, shouldn't we return to it? That can be dangerous because obviously times in the past aren't the same for everyone. So what would have been amazing in the past for my parents might not have been for someone of a different situation or different, culture or whatever. That being said, I think it's okay to enjoy, like, the whole let people enjoy things meme, I think is fine. Like, no one's saying everything in 1973 was incredible. But we are saying Mad Men's one of the best TV shows ever made. Like, it's okay for both of those to be true. For us to have movies about the bad parts of times, have movies about the good parts of times, and have movies that are just stories in that time period. Not every movie has to do everything. A movie about me would not tell the same story as a movie about you, even though we're both two mid-20s white dudes. They aren't the same. And in the same way, I think no two movies about a 1972 woman should be the same. Every story is different. And so I think, going back in the past to see those stories is okay. There's no responsibility. If you were telling a story of my life, you probably wouldn't get into a Middle Eastern conflict because that doesn't really have a daily impact on my life.
Mm-hmm.
But that's still, like, really, really important. It's just not part of this story. So I think it's okay to kind of segment off things and enjoy them as they come, or be challenged by them as they come, whatever the intent is of the film or TV show.
So now I want to talk to you about the let people enjoy things meme. Let's call it that. Because like I've been hit with that many times throughout my like career, like whenever or even on my internet life, because I'll post something and I'm like, man, this sucks. And then somebody always hits me with like a, bro, let people enjoy things. And I'm like, so I just can't say what I don't like but I've also learned since I've grown up a little more, like if you're bashing someone or like saying, hey, you're stupid if you think this is cool, that's where I think the danger comes in and that I've learned. Because I used to be really brutal online with like hating a movie or just hating any kind of media. And I want to apologize to those people because like there would be like conversations like I remember in high school kids would be like, man, Trevor, have you watched the new Glee episode? And I hated Glee. And I'd be like, no, I'm not an idiot. And I was like, man, I'm such a nice guy. Look at me. Yeah. And then I would think of those times. I'm like, what was I thinking?
Wait a second.
But yeah, like, that's pretty much what I wanted to say and ask you about that. Like, when do you think there's a line between like, when can I say I don't like this thing, or when can I say this sucks?
So I think, for example, and I say this as I'm wearing a Star jacket, so like no one come for me. I promise. I watched all the movies.
You're wearing a what?
But a Star Wars jacket I have on currently.
Yeah.
It's the nerdiest. Oh, I love it though. So with that context, I think the most recent Star Wars is dreadfully bad. I think it is a terrible film. But
Yeah.
some of my close friends love it, and I don't think any less of them because they enjoyed it. I think we have to figure out a way, and this is where nuance is difficult in 240 characters. Whether you're on Twitter or you're not, that's kind of become how we all post. It is okay to say, I think this film is poorly crafted. I don't think it is a good film. But you can also, I can think a film is bad and also think it's valid that people enjoyed it. And I think that's where we have to understand, kind of getting back to speaking to your audience, telling the story correctly for the people who are with you and following you and engaging with you on a topic.
Mm-hmm.
There is a different level of criticism that I think is valid and acceptable when you are acting as a critic, as someone who is engaging with art on a cultural topic, and just as someone who thinks a movie is good or bad. So I think that's something my wife and I watch a bunch of cooking shows while we eat. That's kind of our thing, is we'll watch, different competitions. So we recently watched the Great British Baking Show, and now we're watching a new show, what's it called? The Final Table, I think, on Netflix. And the Great British Baking Show is amateurs. It's just people who on the weekend are coming and baking, and they're all sweet, and it's wonderful, and there's some weird British compliments, and I love it. It's great. The Final Table is all Michelin-starred chefs competing. So obviously, those two, Joe, who baked dumplings once in his kitchen, is quantifiably not as good as someone with 2 Michelin stars at cooking. They're just not. But something I've been struck by is they adjust the criticism in those shows based on the level they're talking to. So if Joe the home baker is making his dumplings, they'll say, this is really good. These 3 things failed, but overall it's a good dish. When someone on the Final Table barely oversalts something, they're like, the concept is good, but your execution is terrible. But it clearly would have been the best thing that I've ever eaten. Easily. So I think that's kind of the same. This is a real rambling answer, so I apologize, Trevor. But
no, dude, this is great.
I think that's kind of the same thing with art criticism, is know who you're talking to. So if you are talking to an audience who wants to critique a film based on its craft, that's great. I mean, I love doing that. I post reviews. I see when we can all see movies, when people can do things. I see 3 movies a week. I tend to go to one with my wife, one with Rob and some friends of ours, and one by myself. And I posted reviews of them, giving them, a ranking system and explaining what I thought was well crafted and what wasn't, and the pacing and the scripting. But then it's also okay to talk about that same movie with a buddy and be like, man, wasn't that scene cool? And I think both of those things are very valid and are just used for different goals.
Mm-hmm. So that makes me think of, the leader over at the Thunderdome that I was telling you about. One of my favorite things he ever showed whenever we went over there, because we started off, he always talks about and gives some kind of advice or gives a lesson about filmmaking. And so he came in and he was like, so I want to show you guys 2 different videos and I want to see your reaction. So the first one was the world's biggest ski jump or something like that. So Isaac played it and the reaction was oh, cool. Nice. World's biggest ski jump. The next video was an 8-year-old little girl going down her very first ski slope. And she sounds nervous. She sounds a little scared. And everybody's reaction, of course, was as she's going down, everybody's just holding their breath. Or they want this little girl to make it down. And then she makes it down and her dad's waiting for her. She's like, you did it. And she's like, yay. Yeah. And Isaac was like, which one was more exciting to watch? And it was just it's because of the different levels, I think. Mm-hmm. So with your cooking show, Joe Schmo that made dumplings once in his kitchen and everybody loves him is almost more endearing than a 5-star chef making the best cuisine he's ever made in his life.
Well, and I think it's interesting because I think the let people enjoy things meme tends to be a way to tell people not to be critical of things. But I think it has to go both ways. If what you enjoy is really digging into the craft behind a film, let people enjoy that. like it's okay. Like there's a reason there's Robert, I'm blanking on the name of the famous reviewer. Ebert.
Yeah, Roger Ebert.
Roger Ebert, there we go. He's now Robert, apparently. Who knew? But there's a reason he's made such a big impact on culture, and there's also a reason that maybe the films he loves aren't box office successes all the time. So I think, it's that nuance that we don't tend to lead with of both are valid. You can watch a movie because it's a cheesy, great movie, and you can watch a movie because it's well made. And both are fine, and both have their place.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to know that. And Chase responded to one of my tweets like a while back, or as actually a few days ago. So I made a comment about the new 1975 album, and I tweeted and said something like, I'm really digging this new white noise I found on Spotify. Sorry, I meant the new 1975 album. Didn't even say I hated it or anything. I just said it sounded like white noise, and Chase made the joke, let people enjoy things. And then some people or another girl tweeted at me and said that's true, I know. But another girl tweeted back and said, some people like white noise, Trevor. And I was like, I didn't even say I hated it. Come on.
To be fair, I actually like some 1975 songs, but their album title.
I do too.
Oh my gosh. I love it when you were sleeping, for you were so beautiful yet unaware. Is that the name of one of their albums? It's something like that.
It's something that's way too long. I'll say that.
And it's just like, man, I see it. And Chase and Cody, who's another great friend of mine, the two of them were on the 1975 train early. I give them credit. They were both right. The band is a great band. I also think the band could maybe read a little bit less of their own press, but that's okay. It's like we've had a professor who was like that. Was he the smartest professor at school? Absolutely. Did he know he was? Absolutely. I won't say who, but there was a certain religion professor. You'll probably figure it out, Trevor.
No, I actually know exactly who you're talking about now.
Yeah, I love him. He's great.
I mean, it's good to know your intelligence. So to go back to what you, because most of the time, on my show, I talk about what my guests do, and I feel like I've barely done that with you. But it's good that we've took a dive into your mind, which is really cool.
When I answer 1-minute questions with 15-minute answers, it takes away any chance to do what you actually want to do. So
no, dude, it's great. I love it. So basically what Britton does for a living is he makes content. He writes copy for this amazing company called the Alderman Group. Rob Alderman is a good friend and mentor of mine. Love talking to him and asking for advice on things. But I also want to ask you, how do you stay so fresh with what you do and how you write things? Because what was the artist's name again? The Americana artist?
Oh, sorry, Jason Isabel.
Yeah. So I kind of want to flip that question back on you because you have to do that for a living. I do it for fun with my videos. So whenever money is on the line and, the face of the company is on the line, how do you stay so fresh and you're do this, this will work?
I think, man, 2 answers. One is the team that's around me is truly just class. I love working with every single one of them, and every single one of them brings ideas to the table that are not just interesting, but are often well thought out and well fleshed out. And it's less just what if we did this thing? And it's more, I have a plan for this thing. And the plans are almost always wonderful. So the biggest key to that is having people around you who are better at what they do than you are at what you do. And if you're able to do that, I think you'll always subconsciously be trying to get better at what you do personally. I think the second answer for how to keep it fresh is I'm lucky in that the Alderman Group is an agency that serves 25 to 35 clients depending on the month, each month. And so when you have that, and like I said, it's everything from international religious to local guitar shops, and everything in between. And so there's just not the luxury of getting stale, because what's going to work for the guitar shop, the church would super about versa. Not angry, but it wouldn't work. It wouldn't be effective. And so I think when you're forced to think through 25 different voices each day, you're naturally going to try to learn how to adapt a little bit quicker because you only have 15 minutes to put towards each idea as you go through the day because there's so many flying by. So it's less that that's something I, tried to learn and more just kind of a happy accident of circumstance that I was able to get better at that is just kind of having to think on my feet just based on the amount of clients.
That's rad because like I technically work in an advertising agency too, but like we have one subject or really two subjects like Diamond Dallas Page and yoga. So combining those two things, it feels like there's endless amounts of things to talk about. We could talk about him wrestling and we could talk about people. We've had hundreds of testimonials come in where people are like, I was fat and then out of shape and then I got back into shape, lost a bunch of weight. And I'm just like, there's so much potential for what you can talk about. So it feels like it's even better for you guys because you have such a wide variety of clients because you guys don't just do guitar shop guys. You do churches and all sorts of events and conferences. So it must be pretty cool to, almost do something new every day.
Man, I love it so much. I'm so thankful that so many people have trusted us with their brands and their businesses. It's actually an honor. Like to be able to help someone with the thing that feeds their family. That's in our field. That's something that's one of the biggest honors is that trust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can totally feel that because like I used to intern with quite a few like ad agencies throughout the years, and like one of the coolest things is whenever a client is like, "I like what you did." Like that's exactly what we would do if we did what you do.
Yeah.
That's why they hire you guys is because like they can't do those things, and you're able to be like, hey, we're gonna speak on this as if we're you, which I don't think is a bad thing at all. Some people might be like, that's fake, and I'm like, no, they just don't know how to. It's almost like they can't communicate in that way, and you're the communicator.
Well, and I think that's a great point to bounce off of in that I think often what people in our industry fall into, content creators in general fall into, is that people who don't know how to create content have worse ideas. And I don't think that as I've been able to work with hundreds of people in this, I don't think that's true. I just think people who don't make content don't always know how to communicate them. And so I think a key to anyone who is wanting to be a content producer or work at an ad agency or, anything like that, really just live life, is to make sure to give ideas that aren't yours credence and make sure to actually hear them, not just for what they're saying, but what they are trying to say. Because often if you just take a second to ask a second question rather than assume you're better at it, you're going to A, learn something, and B, you're going to make them happier because you're going to be able to be on the same page. And I think that's something that took me too long to learn that is important. Something
that I've done in the past, because like I've done graphic design work which I've almost completely abandoned for film. But I would make two versions. Like I would be like, okay, this is my version, what I would think. And I'm going to do, what you described. Like the client's like, I want this and this and this. And of course, most of the time, if it was like a poster, they would put 6 billion things on there and add like 80 different phone numbers for some reason. And I'd be like, okay, that's great and all, but let's try this. And then it's such a good feeling whenever you think you figured out what they want and you give it to them and they're like, that's better. Like, that's what I was picturing it would look like. And I'm like, yeah that's why you hired me.
We had a client the other day, a local auto shop, who we were redoing their logo, and they kept saying, I want this to look more bronze. I want this to look more bronze. And so we kept making it more brown because that's technically what that is in an AI file. Mm-hmm. And then finally I asked him again, I was like, what do you want it to look like? And he's like, bronze, like those classic cars, bronze. What he meant was chrome. And so that's one of those examples of like you're saying, like the client they always know what they want, but they don't always know how to tell you what they want. Mm-hmm. And so then we went back to our designer and we were like, no, make it chrome, like ignore bronze. And we send it over and he's like, oh my gosh, this is it. And so that was
what I was trying to tell you.
Exactly. I told you just make it bronze and you did. And then you just have to be like, yes, sir. Like it's bronze. Yes, sir. So
One of
yeah,
my favorite things, you know Nate Powers, right?
yeah, yeah.
He's a he's another Cleveland guy. He told me a really funny story one time. He was doing a wedding, and the guy told him, or he's like, "Hey, is there anything like specific that you want out of this wedding?" And the guy was like, "Yeah, can you make it look like a movie?" And Nate was like, uh, I don't know what you mean by that. So he had to like, keep peeling back the parts to get to the core of what he was trying to say. What he figured out what he was trying to say was he wanted a blurry background. That's all that he was trying to
Oh.
say. But he didn't know how to say that. And I just
Mhm.
found that so fascinating that Nate was able to communicate that with him and peel back those layers to figure out, oh, he just wanted a blurry background,
Right.
which is what
That's
he would
awesome.
have done anyway.
Can you do the thing you know how to do? Yes, sir. Yes,
So
I
that
can.
that was just my favorite like request or direction is
I love that. Yeah.
make it look like a movie because it's almost like a joke, like ah ha ha yeah I'll do that. It's like no, can you actually do that?
Well, and that shows a lot of skill on Nate's part. Nate's excellent at what he does, at
Oh
being
yeah,
able to dig into what the client wanted instead of just taking them at face value. Because most people, I feel like, would have been like, "Oh, that means I can use my drone," but that's not what that guy wanted. He didn't want a drone. He just wanted a blurry background. So, like, well done, Nate. Good on him.
can you think of a story or a situation that you've been in where you had to really like use your communication skills and like your process to make the best ad out of the worst situation, if that makes sense?
It does. I'm trying to think through. Ask it one more time if you don't mind.
Yeah, can you think of a time that you had to use your communication skills and like your process to make like the worst situation out of it, making an ad into like a great, beautiful piece?
The answer is yes. I'm trying to think of a specific time. Um, I mean, that's something. For instance, we work with a local teachers credit union.
Mhm.
And this is a small example. This, if I put thought into it, I'd be able to find a cooler example, I'm sure. But they just wanted to continually tell people, like, come in, we're open, we're open. But what they weren't doing was making them, so that's what they would tell us, tell people to come in, tell people to use our drive through. But they weren't thinking, just because the name teachers is in our name, that doesn't actually mean that we're part of the education community. And so what we had to do was kind of step in and be like, where do teachers hang out? Yes, they're at school, but do they hang out in the break room? Do they all hang out at a certain salon that they've all recommended to each other? Do they hang out in the 4 hour Chick-fil-A drive-through? Um, and then had to go from there into not just we're open, but you are busy. You're a teacher. You get off at 5. You're not going to get out before then. We're open 30 minutes longer than any other bank because we know you have to stay there so that Billy gets home. And that is the evolution. It wasn't as much about rethinking the
Mm.
entire idea as, okay, your idea is good, your idea is valid. How can we expand on that? How can we take that and properly make someone understand?
Dude, that's amazing because I was trying to like as you were saying that I was like trying to figure out, ooh, what is he gonna do? Like how's he gonna get out of this pickle? Because that is tricky to say like, come on in. It seems like so simple. It's very, wholesome country, like
Mm-hmm.
come on in, like we're
Yeah,
open, like Southern hospitality.
yeah,
But you can't do that with every business in the South or it just will all blend together because
right.
that's almost every business motto. It's like, come on in, we'll treat you well.
Well, and you will never meet, sadly, for what I do, you will never meet one person who doesn't work in advertising who says, I just love looking at ads. No one. Your parents, my parents, no one's parents are like, I love enjoying looking, or I love enjoying, I enjoy looking through the ads. But what they do want is an ad that tells them that the blouse they want is on sale, or the shirt they want, or the suit, or I don't know why I'm only picking clothes, but you know what I mean. So they don't care about the ad, they care that they feel understood. And if you can crack through that, you've cracked through all of advertising.
Yeah, I've always found that true, and it's one reason why I actually kind of left the advertising world is because, well, for one, I feel like I hate this phrase, but I feel like I'm an artist, so I wanted to make, what I wanted to make.
Yeah.
But I was like, don't like looking at ads like all the time. I don't like figuring out the best way to say this blouse is on sale for $3.99, which
Right.
that's a very expensive blouse. Don't buy that.
Unless
And
it's $3, in which case maybe still don't buy it because that's gonna fall apart.
yeah, it's gonna you jump in a pool, that thing's disintegrating. But yeah, like I felt like it was manipulative sometimes, and I
Sure.
felt like it wasn't, you know, I mean, I wasn't advertising anything that was out of my moral compass, but it was just like it didn't feel honest on my part.
Well, and
And
honestly, sometimes it's not. Like that's something that you want to pick, and that's something I'm really thankful for Rob for. Is you need to work with people who actually want to work with people who matter, and not just matter because they're important or they're a flashy name, but because they're doing something that you support. And so that's something Rob's always been big on: is we don't work with people that we wouldn't do business with, just as a person. And so if you use that as your motto, you're able to actually, nothing feels better. For instance, United Way of the Ocoee region is one of our clients. Nothing feels better than when they hit fundraising goals, because I know that I was a small part of, thousands of families being fed who wouldn't be otherwise. And so advertising is one of those things. And I think that's like that with a lot of industries where if you do work that you believe in, it is one of the most rewarding things there can be. But very quickly, you can turn into someone you don't want to be. And you just have to ask yourself every day, is this who I am? Is this who I want to become? Because we often become the things we do the most.
right, and that makes me think of another story on my part. I was offered, I won't say who it was or even what the video was going to do, but it went against everything I've ever made and like my upbringing and everything. And eventually the project fell apart because initially I said yes, and then the project fell apart. And then I kept thinking about like, what if I actually did that? Like, how would I feel about myself? Like, what would my family think or whatever?
Right.
And like, if I were to be offered it again, I would have been like, no, I can't do that. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And I think there's always a respectful way to do that. You can refer them to someone who would take on that kind of thing. Because one
Right.
man's, or one person, I don't want to make it gendered, one person's moral quandary with something doesn't apply to another person sometimes. And
Mhm.
so there's always a good way to go about that. And I think people respect integrity. Whether or not you agree with what they're doing, they respect you saying, like, hey, that's not for me. Thank you for thinking
Mhm.
of me though. And it's always a fair way to handle it, I think.
Yeah, totally. And so, Brenton, we're kind of nearing the end of the show. I try to keep it around an hour. Is there anything else you'd love to tell the people?
Man, everyone keep checking out Trevor's stuff. His videos are getting better and better as they go. Each one of them is awesome. Yes, Tony Hawk shared one, but there was one our friend Chase was on like a year and a half ago about, was it your grandmother's yard sale?
Yeah, well, it pretty much was a garage. It was an estate sale. Like everything had to
Okay.
go.
That was like the freaking funniest thing I've ever seen. I laughed so hard at it. But back then, I liked all your videos and I thought all of them were well done, but like me enjoying one that much was like one out of every three or four. Now, like every single one you put out, I think is really well made. It's really great. I can see you pushing yourself with every video. So people, check out Portable Trevor because he's doing good stuff and it's worthwhile to invest in artists. They shape everything around us.
Yeah, and I also want to give a shout out to um, now to kind of bring the energy down a little bit. It's going to be a little bit of a bummer, but I think there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So Britton's dad suffered from it was a stroke, right?
It was a heart attack, but yeah.
It was I'm sorry. Um, and they really need help. There is a GoFundMe. I will link it below, and I would really encourage everyone to donate to that. They the I've not met the Miethe family, but I've met Britton, and if they're all as wonderful as he is, then they're an amazing family. So I think that I think they deserve a click at least to read the story. And you can donate $1, you can donate two if you wanted to. So I would really like to encourage everyone to do that.
I'm humbled, man. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Can you give everyone like an update on your dad real quick?
Yeah, he is. So he, like Trevor said, he had a massive heart attack about 4 weeks ago. Was actually legally dead for 10 minutes, I think. But he is out of the hospital. He is able to walk and move around. There's still some neurological issues that are preventing him from returning to work at this point. But the fact that, man, 4 weeks after a heart attack induced by coronavirus, 4 weeks after that, he's out and around the house and mostly himself is, whatever you want to call it, whether you refer to it as a miracle or just wonderful. It's amazing to see. So
Yeah, and I'm glad there's at least progress. Like not many people can say that have been through that.
yeah,
So yeah, prayers and thoughts going to your dad, and yeah, great family, great dude. Thank you, Brenton, for being on the show. You were an amazing guest. I had a really good time, man.
Yeah, man, me too. Thanks for having me.
Heck yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining. And thank you, Chase, for being in the chat. I want to read one more thing he said. He said this like at the beginning of the show. But Chase had this dumb joke where it's Kyle's band, the guy we've been talking about. It's called My Captain, My King. It's a Lord of the Rings reference. Chase made it into two people, Mike Apton and Mike Ing.
Does Kyle know about this? Can I text him and ask him when that album's coming out and he'll know what I mean?
No, I don't even think Chase has only told me. I'm almost positive.
That will be a key part of our Kyle Brooks tribute episode.
We need to do a Kyle Brooks benefit concert, even though there's nothing wrong with him.
It's just for his benefit.
Yeah. Nice. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for coming and have a blessed night. See you later.